Hey, you're tuned in to Tech Talk with VLink, an award-winning podcast brought to you by VLink Inc. In each episode, host Tracy Gardner sits down and talks trending tech with global business and tech executives.
Welcome to Tech Talk with VLink, the show where we explore what's next in technology through the lens of real-world leaders who are building it. I'm your host, Tracy Gardner, and today we're diving into one of the most transformative forces in enterprise technology, AI adoption, specifically the pitfalls, the progress, and of course, the possibilities. Joining us today is someone who knows this terrain well, Manoj Mohan, a seasoned engineering executive with more than 2 decades of experience leading large-scale software, data, and AI platform transformations at companies like Intuit, Meta, Apple, and Cloudera. Manoj has helped global engineering teams modernize data stacks, scale AI ML platforms, and build cloud-native systems that support billions of transactions. Wow, that's mind-blowing. Beyond the tech, he brings a strong focus on responsible AI, developer experience, and creating engineering cultures that thrive at scale. Manoj has led globally distributed engineering teams building resilient platforms that evolve with scale. Outside of work, Manoj is an avid advocate for health span and longevity, exploring how technology, data, and daily systems can extend human potential. I'm excited to hear about this, both in how we live and how we build. Welcome, Manoj, to Tech Talk with VLink. So glad to have you here.
Thank you, Tracy, for having me on the podcast. Great to be here. Look forward to the session.
Likewise. Well, Manoj, let's just start off with asking you this. You've worked with leading tech giants, lots of big names, Meta, Intuit. You've seen AI evolve in real time, really. Where would you say most enterprises are today in their AI adoption journey? Are they early, experimental, or would you say they're embedded?
Yeah, great question to get this podcast started. So, in my opinion, most enterprises are in the experimental phase, with a handful of them in early integration, and even fewer having AI truly embedded in their production workflows. The common blocker that I see with most enterprises are a couple of different factors, like one, messy data, two, unclear ownership of AI-driven decisions, and
Mhm.
and no upfront definition of successful outcomes. These are some of the most common causes that I see. Now, on the other end, the enterprises that are moving towards a more mature state of AI share few key traits, and I think this is good for everybody
Mhm.
listening in. One, the AI
Yeah.
outcomes solve for a real pain point for that particular for their customers, for that workflow. Two, they have incorporated a good closed feedback loop associating those outcomes back to the model behavior. And three, the ROI, which is essentially the cost versus the business impact, is clearly measured and tracked as part of the operational metrics. So the discipline for enterprises would be, how do you graduate from experimenting with AI
Yeah.
to running on AI for business acceleration? Yeah.
For sure. Well, Manoj, let's talk about those common misconceptions business leaders have when they first embark on an AI initiative. I'm sure you've heard many.
Yeah. Yeah. So the most common misconception is that, AI is a magic bullet and that AI can automatically deliver business impact just because you've trained or deployed a model, which is absolutely not true. I have seen a lot of leaders focus on the model as a step one instead of defining the core problem. Again, not the approach I would want folks to take. Investing in AI without a good understanding of the problem or even assessing if the underlying data footprint is even trustworthy is not a recipe for success.
Yeah.
So most folks also underestimate the amount of pre-work that's needed, be it in terms of data quality, be it in terms of ownership, feedback loops, and the effort involved around integration into actual decision-making process. So in my opinion, a pragmatic path would be something along these lines. Pick one well-defined business metric that you want to move the needle on, ensure the underlying data pipeline that feeds the data to the model is reliable and
Yeah.
trustworthy, integrate the output into a real product workflow, and make sure to build a feedback loop to continuously measure and recalibrate through the AI journey. So, this approach, I believe, should yield a lot more effective results.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think we all have a lot to learn, Manoj. That's why I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Tell me, in your experience, what's the biggest internal blocker to successful AI adoption? It can be culture, might be talent, might be the technology itself.
So, in my experience, the biggest internal blocker is misaligned culture and ownership. To be more specific, the lack of a clear problem framing and accountability for turning AI into an actionable workflow. Let me deep dive into it a little bit
Sure,
and add more color.
please
So,
do.
teams typically build models in isolation. Nobody owns the end to end outcome, and the feedback loops between users, data, engineering are weak or missing. That could be one factor. Now, two, this also leads to well intentioned pilots that never get integrated into the product because stakeholders don't trust the outcomes, don't see the value metric, or weren't involved early enough. So, in
Mhm.
my opinion, I would suggest a methodology along these lines. Pick one business outcome, like I was stating earlier.
Yeah.
Assemble a small squad of data plus engineering plus product plus the decision owner. Ship an MVP, not the entire product. Ship an MVP, a core MVP as a workflow. Instrument usage and value, and then iterate based on feedback to improve it for the better. So this way, you're building trust, you're creating momentum, and you're turning culture from being a blocker into more of an accelerator. Yeah.
Great idea. I mean, great idea. I wouldn't have expected you to say culture, but that's interesting that you did. So, and explained it so well. Manoj, many organizations, I would say, kind of rush into AI expecting the quick wins. I think we all do. What are some of the major pitfalls you've seen? You can give examples from some of the big places you've worked at into a meta, or whoops, my microphone fell, or just some of your own.
Yeah, absolutely. There are several pitfalls you could be running into as a large enterprise. So let me try stating a few of them. So one, no clear problem to solve. You're starting with the model instead of the outcome, so the AI doesn't map to a business metric or a real measured user pain point. Two, weak data plumbing, like I said earlier, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
Data is siloed or poorly labeled or
Mm,
not versioned, so models never get reliable inputs. And if you don't give a reliable input to a model, that's not going to give you, a fairly consistent outcomes.
exactly.
Next one I would say is ownership gaps. Models built in isolation by a data team that nobody owns or
Mm,
nobody integrates with, and the outcomes of that particular model are not baked into a full-fledged product workflow or even measured for adoption. That could be another pitfall. Lack of consistent feedback loops. If you don't build real-time instrumentation or user validation, drift detection could happen, bad outcomes could happen, and the trust over the outcomes will potentially erode over time, and it'll eventually get to be too late to get it fixed. And one last thing I would say is also a lot of teams tend to over engineer in the first iteration. Teams spending months and months trying to come up with a complex architecture instead of staying focused on shipping a small MVP that actually delivers some value, and so much to learn from based on that MVP is kind of lost in translation if you try over engineering. So these would be the common pitfalls. Yeah.
And that makes total sense, makes total sense. And you've mentioned isolation a couple times, building that isolated AI solution, and then it doesn't scale, worse, no one uses it. How can companies avoid that trap?
So, far too often, I see teams spin up a shiny AI prototype, which is great for a demo, but 6 months later or a few months later, you hardly have any users using that. So to avoid that trap, my suggestion would be to start by anchoring every AI project to a clear business outcome or even a real user workflow within the product. The way to go about doing it would be one, I would say collaborate with stakeholders from day one, engage with the stakeholders right from day one, pull in your product owners, be it your operations team, be it your frontline users, all of them, engage with them even before you write a single line of code. Their hands-on feedback is going to keep you honest as to are you really solving a pain point that the customer actually has? And if it is not, then it's absolutely not worth the effort. The second one I would say is embed AI with a platform mindset, not as a one-off script. Think
Mm,
about building common services, think about scalable data ingestion pipelines, think about a feature store, think about model serving APIs. So this way, every time you're solving for an additional new use case, you could reuse and extend everything that you have built for the prior AI model. And that way, the upfront investment pays dividends as your footprint starts to grow over time.
yeah.
The next one I would say is measuring engagement and impact as rigorously as the model accuracy. You've got to track your usage metrics, you've got to track the time saved or the error reduction or
Mhm.
whatever truly matters to the business. If the numbers aren't there, then iterate or pivot early rather than doubling down into subsequent milestones.
Such great advice. And how do you incorporate responsible AI practices? Because I think, we're hearing more and more about guardrails, which I love, for things like bias reduction, fairness, transparency into engineering teams and product roadmaps.
Yeah, so responsible AI cannot be going in a silo. It has to be baked into every single sprint and every roadmap decision. A few principles that I try to imbibe would be one, I think defining clear guardrails up front. Even before any model gets to a code review, make sure to document fairness goals, data
Yeah.
lineage requirements, explainability targets in the PR templates. And this way, every engineer on the team will start to understand all of the non-functional must-haves alongside accuracy. I
Mhm.
spoke about feedback loops a little earlier, doubling down on feedback loops with the cross-functional team. And the way to go about doing it would be, every quarter or at a regular cadence, the model owner can present the results not just to engineering, but to legal, to ethics, to security, to compliance, to all the cross-functional partners. And all of their diverse feedback would uncover blind spots early in the game. And then the one other thing I would emphasize is educating and empowering the team, by running monthly responsible AI workshops where engineers assess and analyze real examples of model drift or unfair outcomes, and then spin up user stories to bake these solutions into libraries or any common frameworks and things like that. So net, what you want to do is you want to codify the responsibility in your pipelines, in your roadmaps, and in your culture. And that way you're moving away from having to do a one-off audit to more of a continuous practice that makes like assessment of fairness, be done at every step of the journey. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Have those guardrails in place from the beginning is just the best way to do it. Now, Manoj, as AI matures, where do you, because it seems like it's maturing at lightning speed. I mean, we hear something new every day. Where do you see the greatest untapped opportunities for enterprise innovation?
So honestly, I would tag them into a couple of different buckets. Thinking so one, I would say context-aware co-pilots. Most people typically bounce between a handful of 5 or 6 apps just to get a simple task done.
Yeah.
So embedding a small AI assistant right inside those tools, be it drafting emails or summarizing the status, or even the trigger tickets can turn, fragmented work into more of a smooth, mesmerizing workflow. From an operational excellence standpoint, like having the ability to proactively, tackle operational alerts. We have always had dashboards that scream something when something breaks, but almost nothing that whispers when trouble is brewing. So
Hmm.
wrapping lightweight predictive models around your live data, be it a supply chain delay, be it a server health, or whatever, will enable you to proactively get the highlights of the issues even before they start to impact your SLAs.
Yeah.
And then, you could also do something along the lines of synthetic data playbooks. Privacy constraints have typically, stalled a lot of projects, especially when it comes to AI, when it comes to data, and so on. So being able to generate compliant, high fidelity synthetic data sets can potentially accelerate everything from customer churn models to anomaly detection without touching, PII and things like that. So this is how I would approach it.
And you've got so much wisdom, I mean, from your years at Meta and Intuit, and so much, it's so crazy. You make it sound easy, but what would you say, Manoj, excites you the most about the convergence of AI and platform engineering over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, great question. Platform engineering is how large enterprises scale for value and velocity. And, now with AI, I see AI becoming that very fabric of how we build and run platforms,
Yeah.
which is amazing because now, with AI, you're able to quadruple the velocity to even more greater heights.
Mhm.
So, in my opinion, over the next few years, I see a few big shifts happening along the lines of potentially self-optimizing infrastructure, even more curated AI-driven developer experience, and possibly, closed loop reliability. So let me explain.
Yeah.
So, what I mean by self-optimizing infrastructure. So imagine all of your CI/CD pipelines, auto-scaling policies, and even your network routing, all fine-tuning themselves in real time based on actual production traffic and failures. So rather than an ops team that is constantly tweaking the knobs, which is what we do today in production, the platform learns from every deployment and proactively starts to adjust in real time. And
Wow.
this would translate to even more fewer customer incidents. It'll make the costs even more optimal for the enterprises and so on. So that's what I'm referring to as self-optimizing infrastructure. The developer experience part, gone are the days of having to do a manual environment setup or
Mhm.
scavenging through disconnected documents to configure or iterate a workflow. We'll start to see a lot more of the embedded co-pilots that are enabling the integrated development environments and dashboards that suggest code snippets or highlight misconfigurations and so on.
Yeah.
And the last one around closed loop reliability, I would say, the loop between monitoring, incident response, and remediation when there are troubles brewing in your production infrastructure. We will start to see AI agents that'll detect some of these anomalies, diagnose these root causes, and propose the fixes. And in some cases, it might also trigger the workflow for getting a human approval. So uptime becomes something more of a guarantee rather than the ops team having to, enable and do all of this.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I mean, this excites me quite a bit because, because platform engineering is what I have focused on for the last many, many years.
Yes.
And this definitely enables us to accelerate on all of those platform engineering goals, with AI. Yeah.
It's definitely exciting. Well, Manoj, let's take a quick pivot. Yeah, I mentioned it in the beginning. You're a strong advocate for longevity and optimizing human potential. How do you see AI impacting the way we live, the way we work, not just as professionals, but just as people, outside of the professional environment?
Yeah, so thank you for asking this question. I think this is where my personal and professional interests start to converge. I am passionate about maximizing health span and believe we are entering an era of AI where AI is not just a productivity tool, but also a co-pilot for extending human vitality. Let me try and explain. So,
Yeah.
I see AI accelerating longevity and human potential in a couple of key dimensions. First one, I would say, is obvious, which is the personalized health insights. Within a few years, I think we've started to, rely more and more on wearables,
Yeah.
genomics, and lifestyle data. And all of this will potentially feed AI agents that will start to spot subtle health trends, be it everything from an early inflammation to sleep pattern shifts, and suggest and come back with suggestions like tailored nutrition, or exercise routines or mindfulness adjustments before the issues become more serious. So,
Interesting.
so this kind of proactive and preventive nudge can literally add a few additional years of healthy living to most of human beings. So that's one. The second one I would say is optimized life work flow. So today in work, you get to see smart assistants that handle the routine, that take care of meeting notes, that take care of the routine emails, and so on. So
Time
what that
saving. Time
Yeah.
saving.
So what that means is every individual gets to leverage these productivity benefits, and what that would translate to is lesser burnout,
Yeah.
more focus on creative human to human problem solving, and greater overall work satisfaction.
Yeah.
And the third one I would highlight is, the the symbiosis of human and AI towards purposeful work. As AI starts to take care of more and more of the repetitive and transactional work, every human being is going to have more energy and time to focus on what truly matters to them, be it meaningful creation, be it relationships, be it their purpose, and things like that.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, I think of AI as a longevity multiplier, giving people the space to live not just longer, but also with a greater meaningful intention that they want to pursue.
And I
So,
love that.
yeah, so in short, I think AI will become, the personalized wellness coach, the time management partner, and it's going to enable all of us, to live longer, to live healthier, to live with a more fulfilling life, both in office and outside of office. So, incredibly exciting time to
It
live,
is.
and incredibly energized by this convergence, in my opinion. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you point out such great things about AI because I think we do hear negative a lot on AI. So I just so much appreciate the thought-provoking conversation we've had here today. You've definitely given us a clear roadmap on how to move forward with AI in a positive way that's not only smart and scalable, but also responsible. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for all the insightful questions. It's been a great session. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Manoj. And for those of you listening, we hope today's discussion sheds some light on the real world challenges and exciting possibilities of AI adoption in the enterprise and in your personal life, too. If you shared this episode, don't forget to follow Tech Talk with VLink and share it with your network. We'll be back soon with more insights from the leaders shaping tomorrow's tech landscape.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Tech Talk with VLink by VLink Inc., headquartered in Connecticut. We'll see you in the next one.